In just a few minutes, small business owners can now sign up for Blackfoot Communication Services. Whether it's dependable voice options or internet services, sign up simply by visiting blackfootsmallbusiness.com. Click on the services you wish, select an installation time and date, and you're done. Small business services at the touch of your fingers. Connect to more with Blackfoot Communications and blackfootsmallbusiness.com.
All right, exciting day for Bobcat football as we welcome 25 young men into the program on the heels of we felt like was a great season. Finishing up last Saturday. Obviously, we'd love to be dual workload today, but all good things, I guess, come to an end. And in order to move forward, you need to bring in quality young men. And for the most part, our aim was to look at the high school ranks. This year's 23 of the 25 are high schoolers. We do have 2 transfers that will be with us starting in January, and I think there's potential for more transfers. But in this day and age, you got 2 choices. You can develop over the long haul, or you can go the get rich quick method. And we're definitely leaning more on the develop over the long haul. We do have a roster, I think, that is maturing, and that allowed us to take more high school kids this year, and feel like we did a tremendous job in evaluating over the course of the last really 12 months. I think the efforts with this group maybe go beyond that with some local guys, but for the most part, getting out in the high schools and focusing on juniors for the first time in January was part of our plan. Getting a lot of them to campus through the course of the last several months. 18, I think, of the 23 were on campus this summer for camps of some form. Getting a chance to evaluate them firsthand on campus is always a big thing. And then we had several of the out-of-state guys on campus this fall for games, for official visits. And it goes without saying, our game day environment here is something that makes a great impression. And we're pleased to be able to showcase that on fall Saturdays. So the breakdown, starting off, we have 12 kids from the state of Montana in this freshman class, 13 on offense and 10 on defense of the 23 freshmen, and then 1 each on each side of the ball as far as transfers go. I think the big thing with this group, at this point in time, we've covered all the position groups. We're probably not exactly complete necessarily, but we've covered them all to some degree. A good number of multi-position, multi-sport guys, just good athletes, good competitors, and guys that while they've competed at a high level, have a capacity for growth. The guys that can develop in the years to come, whether that's under the tutelage of our position coaches, certainly working with Coach Heron in the strength room. We're real excited about that. A lot of credit obviously goes to our assistants who each have an area themselves. That's where we start area recruiting, and then we certainly branch off into some position coach recruiting. But a lot of credit goes to them. Certainly our support staff works very, very hard and to bring this all together. So we're really pleased with the group. What I'll probably do here is just go through according to the release. Just go right down the row here. So first one I want to talk about is Ty McCulloch, a receiver from CSU, Colorado State. He's originally from the IE, the Inland Empire in Southern California. He was a guy that I was familiar with out of high school. We had offered him in Wyoming. Our recruiting didn't go much further than the interest that we had. Ultimately, he chose Colorado State, has played there, and has gone through a situation in his time where they've had multiple head coaches. I think he said he's had 6 position coaches. So he's a young man, I think, that's craving stability and consistency, and obviously is attracted to the winning we've done. His older brother Andre played for Coach Armstrong at Rocky Mountain, so there was a connection there that was very strong. I think Andre had a really positive experience coming up from California here to Montana, and obviously Coach Armstrong had a great relationship with them. So really pleased to bring in Ty. Ty will have 2 years to compete, and we anticipate that he'll come in and compete right away for playing time. We also added Blake Stillwell. Blake is a DB, probably a safety for us, but has flexibility in the back end to play a bunch of different places. He hails from the Orlando area, and he's a classic case of a guy that first off was more of a basketball player in high school, played football, but was more of a basketball player, didn't find football as his next level opportunity until probably late in his senior year. His senior year was the year 1920, the COVID year that ultimately made recruiting really challenging. Went to prep school fall of 20 in New England, hoping to spur his recruiting. Then he found his way to Louisiana. Southern University is a 2-year school in Shreveport, or has a 2-year school in Shreveport. Play a little bit there. That's where he crossed paths with Coach Garza. Coach Garza was at McNeese. Has been on Coach Garza's radar since. Whatever happened there, that opportunity came to an end with their commitment to football. Ends up going to Navarro in Texas. Ultimately ends up at New Mexico military this past fall, and so hasn't played a lot, but really feel good about his athleticism. It just so happens he works out, or has worked out for many, many years, with a guy down in Florida that played at NDSU while I was coaching, played with Brian Shepard. So I talk about connections that you wouldn't think you'd get from Montana to Florida. There's several with Blake, and we're really excited about his addition to our secondary. We do lose several players in the secondary, so excited about Blake being here in January and start making his way. Going through the high school players, we'll have one January enrollee. That's Chance Wilson. Chance, the quarterback out of Rejoice Christian in Tulsa. Again, connections are part of recruiting. I happen to play with his dad going back to our first couple of years at NDSU. Andrew's Chance's dad, he was a running back. We came into the same class back then, and beyond just that connection, I think the fact that Chance is a very talented athlete, 7-time state champ in track, and was on track to put up just crazy numbers before an injury kind of cut his season short this year. He was the all-world male athlete of the year by the Tulsa World last year, which speaks to just his incredible versatility. Also played basketball. Had him up here this summer. He fell in love with Bozeman. Him and Coach Housewright had an immediate connection as far as their ability to work with one another, and the fact that he was going to be here mid-year was attractive to us to get him in that room sooner than later. So he'll be here in January, and awfully excited about the dual threat nature of Chance's game, but then also the development. Being a 3-sport guy, focusing on football now will really allow him to flourish, we feel like, in the years to come. The guys that will be joining us in the fall, starting with Everett Carr from right here in Bozeman. I think Everett was a guy that even though he played football, found football as far as his college sport option, later in the game, probably midway through his junior year. He's also played hockey and lacrosse here in town, and just has developed like crazy in the last year's time. Was a part of their state runner-up team this year, was first team All-State, has length, has athleticism, has a chance to continue developing. And in that offensive line room, we need guys that by their third year are big, nasty looking guys, and I think Everett really has that opportunity. Next up, Tom Carter. Tom's from the Capital, and Tom, of the guys in state this year, he was a guy that has been on our radar, certainly. His dad played here. He's got 2 sisters that run track. But Tom was a guy that needed to go out and have a great senior year in our eyes, and he did just that. He was the AA offensive MVP for the state champs at Capital, primarily playing running back, a position he hadn't played, really leading into this year. Also played defense for him. We see him as a receiver. He's a state champion 200-meter runner, so has the speed, has the toughness, has still some room to grow from a receiver perspective, but has those things you can't coach when you talk about the speed aspect, and has the good size along with that, and real desire to be a Bobcat. And he was our latest commitment in this bunch, and really appreciate Tom jumping on board. Next up, just going alphabetical here, Mikey D'Amato from Mission Viejo down in Southern California. Mikey was a guy that was in our camp this summer, and he really jumped on the scene at camp. Very competitive. A guy that is maybe somewhere between a safety and a linebacker, nickel type of guy, and really excited. He plays in a really high level high school league down in Southern California. Has been a very productive player for a very good program, and we're excited to add Mikey to the mix. JJ Dolan next up out of Missoula Sentinel. JJ is first team All-State, two-time state champion as Sentinel 1, his junior and sophomore year. JJ was tremendously versatile for Sentinel this year, on both sides of the football, making tackles, making plays, scoring touchdowns, lining up a Wildcat. Just really impressive. Comes from a long line of football players. He'll be the first one to don blue and gold. So we're excited about that. His aunt Heather, though, was a star volleyball player back here back in the day. So, excited to have another Dolan walk on campus here in Bozeman. Next up, Coulter Petrie, DB from Helena High. And we see, Coulter has a bunch of versatility in the back end. There was first team All-State this past year. Also plays hoops. His mother was a great basketball player here back in the day for the Cats. And, the stories of Tom and JJ and Coulter certainly having those family ties in some fashion, not only to the Bobcats, but just to collegiate athletics, is certainly a big deal. And in Coulter, we see a guy that could develop, awfully competitive, really wanted to be a Bobcat. We're excited to add him to the mix. Next up, Andrew Paul. What I didn't, my sheets flipped. Well, we're not really going alphabetical here. Whatever. Andrew Pauldrell. I was like, I went from D to P. Why don't I catch back up on the alphabet right here? Patrick Duchesne. Let's talk about Patrick next. Patrick, quarterback out of Florence, Carlton, just south of Missoula, led into the last two state championships, playing for his dad, Pat. Patrick's a guy going into his junior year that came to camp, and I think we identified as a potential guy, and he's just continued to grow and get better and better. The numbers he put up this year for a much different team. The role he had to take on this year was much more, I think, significant, throwing for 2,800 yards, rushing for over 1,000. Really became more of a dual threat type of guy. And, coach's son, obviously student of the game. We're really excited about what Patrick can do. He's 6'2", 205 now. He's, like I said, he's continued to develop, and, really excited to add Patrick along with Chance to our quarterback room. Bryce Greavy, a familiar last name for sure. Brody's younger brother out of Melstone. Played six-man, a little bit different path than Brody. Brody had gone over to Roundup and played, and then went to prep school. So, in Bryce, there's some differences certainly, but the athleticism at the core is there. A really good basketball player, really good in track. And Bryce is a guy that I think from the first time we looked at him, even last season to now, where he is right now, has gotten better and better as a football player. Playing six-man, you clearly have to be the best guy out there to play, I think, at our level. And there was no doubt that Bryce was that. Touched the ball a lot, scored a lot of touchdowns, was in on a lot of plays on the defensive side, and really excited to get another Greavy in the program. We'll play Bryce at linebacker. Scott Trey Humphrey, running back from Rainier Beach in Seattle, is the next one up. Getting a couple high school running backs in this class was really important. And, Scott Trey was a guy that we hadn't offered in the spring, but really had a tremendous senior year. Rushed for 1,900 yards, was the MVP player of the year of his league in Seattle, which says a lot. Played well against all the competition. He's he's built now, 5'11", 210. He also wrestles. He's wrestling like, I think, at 220. So he's got toughness. He's got balance. But he also has speed to finish runs. So, he'll be a treat to watch down the road here for sure. Cedric Jefferson, an offensive tackle out of Temecula in Southern California, was a guy that we identified through his senior year. He was later to football. Dad played at SC, was MVP, I think, at the defensive side of the football at USC, but didn't push him into football. And Cedric ultimately found football on his own, and feel like he's got an amazing upside. 6'4", 265, but he's one of those guys that you can just see the growth in front of him. Very athletic, plays with a mean streak, and was only played the 2 years of high school football. So what he can become, we're very excited about. Adam Jones from Missoula Sentinel, teammate of JJ's, is next up. Early on in the process, out of a junior year, we identified Adam as a top guy in the state, having been a key component of their state championship team his junior year and his sophomore year. Adam, very versatile athlete. How he's used on the football field and in every which way. Certainly as a running back, but as a wildcat quarterback, a receiver, as a safety, as a returner. Just a playmaker in every which way. Also played hockey and baseball. Was an excellent baseball player that had opportunities at Division I baseball. But he was a guy that saw our opportunity, saw what we saw in him as a running back. Brings a lot of versatility to that position, which we want. Guys that can catch the ball in the backfield, guys that can run it in all different ways. We're really excited to get Adam into the fold. Javante King, receiver out of Blackfoot down in Idaho, was another guy we identified through the course of his senior year. Receiver that's 6'4", 200. Those numbers jump out at you. But I look at the 71 catches, the 19 touchdowns. He was awfully productive this fall. He again was a little bit of a basketball player growing up through it. Played football, but really flipped his interest probably to football from junior to senior year. And we feel like we got a tremendous athlete, but a guy that has just scratched the surface of what he's capable of at the receiver position. Jonathan Lumen, old lineman, another Florence product. So that gives us 3 out of a Class B school. That says a lot about that program that has won the last 2 state championships. Jonathan, a little bit late to football, but has a great frame, 6'3", 275. And for that size, athletics, so we're really excited to get a chance to work with him in the years to come and see what he can become. Talon Marsh, another Helena Capital kid of that state championship team. He was the defensive MVP at the AA level. Heavyweight champ as a junior on the wrestling mat. And he is just he's one of those guys, pound for pound. He is just a great football player. We're going to play him on the defensive line, and one might say he's undersized, but he's just a guy that plays bigger than his size, impacts the game in so many ways. Played mostly offensive guard on the offensive side for them. Probably could have been a guy, if they put the ball in his hand, he would have done all kinds of things too, but they were giving the ball to Tom. So, Talon, we're really excited about, just a kind of a throwback in a lot of ways, and, excited to add that pedigree to or his pedigree to our program. Zach Nyland, another offensive lineman out of Boise area, 6'4", 300. We see Zach as an inside guy. Zach was in our camp this summer and really liked, how he could move and bend for a guy his size. Zach had an all-state year in a really good league down in Meridian, down in the Boise area. And, to get guys that, again, maybe are a couple years away, but really have that opportunity. Zach certainly fits that bill. Talked about culture. Now I'll move on to Andrew Pauldrell, DB out of the Houston area, the Woodlands. Andrew was a guy that we had identified really early in the process, meaning going back to the spring, and a guy that had the coverage skills, the speed, And then wasn't afraid to come up and tackle you at the same time. And they used him in a lot of different ways. He played corner when they needed him to play corner, played safety when they needed a guy that could force things in the run game. We see it, Andrew, as a nickel, the position played Tayakata at. And he's a guy I think that from in this group that can certainly come in and compete right from the start. So we're really excited about Andrew. Hunter Province, tight end out of San Diego, Christian High School down there, big, long, 6'5", 230, was up for a camp this summer. And for a guy his size, the agility, the body control that he showed, the ability to catch the ball was apparent that day here in June. Caught 44 passes, 10 of which were for touchdowns. So, I think he gives us a different type of target, a little bit more length, and how big he's already 230. How big he'll be able to get will be interesting, but a little bit more size at the tight end position while not compromising athleticism. Hunter Charbonneau out of Fairview in Eastern Montana is the next one up. 8-man football, and Hunter was a beast. He's a 4-time All-State kid at that level, and they handed him the ball a whole lot. Then he'd turn around and play linebacker, and he'd make plays on either side. And it just was apparent watching him, watching his film this fall, that there was going to be a place for him. We see it in the defensive line. I think he's a guy that can certainly put on a bunch more weight and be that kind of terror that we look for on the front on defense. Luke Smith, also from Bozeman Hawks. He's a guy that I think flashed as a junior for the Hawks, and this year was a guy that, okay, Luke, he's lives right down the street. Had an opportunity to come to a bunch of practices, and ultimately it was going to come down to how he played as a senior, and Luke played phenomenal on both sides of the ball. He was an impact player for the team that ultimately made it to the state championship game. Also plays basketball and lacrosse. So really excited about his athleticism, his length as well at that tight end position as we continue to grow that spot in our offense. Dom Solano, a D end out of Cactus down in the Phoenix area, was a guy that, like a lot of these guys, jumped on our radar because he was having a great senior year in which he had 27 and a half sacks. I can't even fathom that. But just a motor that went and went. Also played on the offensive line for him. So he's a guy that wasn't taking plays off. And the way he went after it, play after play, for a team that ultimately was a state runner-up, really excited us. And he came up to a game in, I think it was late October, and committed shortly thereafter. So appreciate what we have in the young defensive end out of the Phoenix area. Cole Taylor, athlete, most likely a linebacker for us out of Great Falls CMR. Cole's been a quarterback up in CMR, hasn't played much defense, but does possess, I think great size, athleticism, toughness. And he displayed that as a quarterback through the years. A quarterback's a tough position for recruiting. And, I think in Cole, we saw a guy that could make the transition to another position, much like, we've had a couple good linebackers the last couple of years that were high school quarterbacks. And not that he's going to become Callahan or Troy, but he's out of that same mold, guys that are just good football players. They just happen to be quarterbacks primarily in high school, and you get them, you coach them up. They're smart kids that understand the game. They can really thrive. Two more here, running out of breath, but Jacob Trimble, a receiver from Fort Worth Christian down in Dallas-Fort Worth, smaller school, but he really dominated at that level. He came up this summer and was very impressive working out. We see him as a slot receiver. But again, a guy that was very productive, 73 catches, 20 touchdowns, played a bunch of Wildcat quarterback. They had to throw him on defense. He could really be a terror there as well. So I knew that was coming, but really excited about Jacob and what he can bring. And he's a guy that at that position, I do think, he could jump in and compete pretty early as well, pretty far developed as far as his skill set. Last but not least, Takialui Lakepa, defensive back, likely a free safety out of Provo, Utah, Timpview High School. So Danny had gone to school in Washington, Puyallup, and they moved to Utah. Taki was primarily a basketball player, but has found his way to football. We had him to camp a couple times this summer and really was impressed with just instincts, ball skills, and knowing that football, it was pretty new to him. He hadn't played in a bunch of years, really impressed us. So it's great. We were down a couple sets of brothers, the O'Reillys, the Fitzgeralds, the Steels. We're all down to one of them. So to get a couple groups, a couple sets of brothers back, and the Greavies and the Louis LeKeppas is a good deal in this class.
Nothing can stop me. I'm all the way up. All the way up. I'm all the way up. I'm all the way up. Nothing can stop me. I'm all the way up. Shorty what you want, shorty what you need. My niggas run game, we ain't never leave. Counting up this money, we ain't never sleeping. You got V12s, I got 12 V's. Got bottles, got weed, got Molly. I'm all the way up. Shorty what you want, I got what you need. Shorty what you want, I got what you need.
So excited about this crew. You gonna give me some water? That was a lot of talking in a short time. I'm excited about this crew, and like I said, it's a lot of versatility, a lot of positions covered, a lot of athleticism. We're excited to get to work with them. So I'll open up for questions.
Wait for the water.
See what he comes up with.
Okay. I guess you mentioned the Steels. So is Brock walking on? Is that
Brock did. He walked on at the beginning of school for us.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yes. So Brock was on the roster and on the scout team all fall.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yep.
And then how does this year recruiting compare to the last year as far as the COVID year? How does that kind of affect your recruiting?
Well, I think it was more normal from an eval perspective on the front end. All things considered, there wasn't a coaching change. We were in it for the full cycle. I think having the ability to go see kids in their environment, whether it was January or last spring, prior to seeing them, potentially in the summer, that was all part of it. So I think way different, and I think our roster matured too. So that meaning, last year we were a combination of high school and a few more transfers. I think we were able to go after more high school kids, I think, because of where our roster is at. Lifesaver right here. Thank you. Okay, I'm good.
Cheering on the Bobcat.
Yeah, I love the
Yeah.
Coach, is Taki just as energetic as Danny?
Yeah, he's got a lot of the same personality. Yeah, I mean, they're just great kids and super positive, can communicate. Obviously love competing. I think that's what comes out. Danny's personality certainly, and I think Taki's wired in a lot of the same ways, and just a joy to be around. So it'll be fun to have two of them.
This is kind of difficult, but one word that could describe this group as a whole. What was the one word you wanted to kind of accomplish with this?
I think versatile, and what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to move them all around once they get here, but they've been versatile to this point, which allows for development on all ends, whether that's physically, certainly just growth within the game of football. And I think they're awfully competitive with that too. So there's no guys that have been on the 365-day football circuit, so they'll get to live that for the first time when they're here and really thrive as football players.
Is there I guess any meaning or significance to the fact that so many transfer receivers have come in even before you were here? Is that something that just is kind of how it's gone, or is there specific with that position group, I guess?
I don't know. I think I think that's a position where it might not seem like you're looking for something specific as far as a makeup in a young man, but you are. There's tons of receivers out there. There are tons. So recruiting receivers can be it can be as tricky as any of the spots, and I think we as a group value versatility, value guys that play multiple sports, value competitiveness. Not to say that that wasn't the case before, but it's just, I think finding guys that fit our mold, I think has been a work in progress. You know, and we turn it over this year again. We lose three, and Willie and Ravi and Coy. I think all that had those things to them. So, you know, we're getting guys that are built from the ground up. You know, what does Christian and I have become is pretty dang important in our program. You know, we got a couple walk-on guys, Dylan Snyder and Zach Dotson Green, that really had good years, and that's, you know, ideally you're seeing those guys through. You're not having a, you know, I like quick fix this position. So I think we're getting it closer, and I look at like a guy like Joante, I think tremendous talent to develop, and that's probably gonna take a little while. You know, Jacob's a guy that can probably come in place sooner than later. And Tom, again, things to really develop upon. But yeah, you would much prefer to see those guys through. And I think in bringing Ty in, you know, there's a guy that there was more to him than just something we saw on film. You know, there's character, a character understanding, and a real for him wanting to be here and identifying our opportunity, because he had plenty of opportunity.
And then with Cleveland, I thought he had already used up all his eligibility. I guess
No, he was able to go back and get an injury year, because he did not play at Kentucky in 21. So that was still up for grabs. And we weren't necessarily, you know, would he want to be here more than a year? But it became apparent as went through the season that if he could have another year, we could apply for that extra year, he would take it. That's what's happening.
Any chance Kagan would, or is he up for?
I think at right, Kagan's still a work in progress, but because he's still recovering. But I think that's the plan, that he's gonna be here in the spring, and we'll see how his recovery continues.
This time next year, what do you want to see accomplished from this group?
Well, ideally, most of them will have redshirted. You know, maybe that means getting in some games like we did this year. There's probably going to be, you know, a couple of them that do find themselves, you know, out there on the game field on Saturdays. But, you know, much like we feel like our freshman crew this year, you see them differently physically. You see them now generally adjusted to college, to the grind, I guess, of a fall of college football. And just immersed into our culture here at Montana State. And I think our older guys, that's a task that's on their shoulders, certainly to bring them along. But as coaches, we got to do the same thing.
What position group are you most pleased with that within your process of recruiting?
I don't know that there's one specific one. I think you know, we're a little short on the defensive side yet. You know, I think offensively, we're probably where we wanted to be numbers wise. So no, I don't know that there's one spot. And that's a good thing. I think it's pretty well spread out. We got, you know, potentially 2 to 3 to 4, maybe more defensive guys we could potentially add as we go along. But you know, pretty excited as a whole.
Did South Dakota State game, did any of that clarify? I mean, obviously you've done most of your recruiting before then, but does that, I don't know, affect how you maybe would view recruiting going forward, or anything as far as trenches or other positions?
Well, I think the first thing we look at out of that game is we got to get bigger and stronger. We have a lot of guys that are playing in our O&D line that are freshmen and sophomores. Albeit some of those guys were 4th-year guys, but that 4 years is goofy when you throw in the COVID year. So that's the first thing. I think we have guys that are capable of continuing to gain weight and strength, and we need to do that. You know, I think since I've gotten here, we've aimed to recruit bigger frames, generally speaking, I guess, and really invested, continue to invest in our strength program and our nutrition program, and you know, getting mature offense and defensive lines like South Dakota State has, that is a commitment over time. There's no quick fix there. All those guys that would fix us quick will fix all the teams across the country. Everybody's looking for offensive tackles, defensive tackles. Everybody is, and those two positions are probably in demand as much as you think quarterbacks are. So no, I think we're doing it the right way. We want to ultimately get to the end of the season and finish that last game and not have to answer questions like that, because I get it. I get the way the last 2 seasons have ended, and we need to keep finding our way to become what we want to on both lines of scrimmage.
12 of the 25 guys you signed are from Montana. Is there any added excitement when you see a guy playing that's from Montana you like and then he signs?
Oh, no question. Absolutely no question. We have the ability here to have our Montana guys be our foundation. And that's not lip service. We need guys in our state to come here and thrive on the football field. And how does that work? I think the first thing is guys are generally multi-sport guys that have the capacity to develop, and we have the tools to develop them. I think their want to succeed is just a little bit different than maybe a guy from out of state. To go to Montana State from Montana, you want to make right by that opportunity. So the guys are going to do whatever they can. And I think just the quality of people and the work ethic and the fabric of our state lends itself to guys that you want on your team. So yeah, this was a really good year, and all things considered, we did really well. And there's 2 kids that are going Power 5 in our state. So there's good football played, high school football played in Montana, and we're going to continue to get the very best that we can.
Hey, Coach, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, this is Patrick Prince with the Tulsa World.
Yep.
Wanted to ask you a couple things about Chance Wilson.
For sure.
Do you see him as a guy, as a potential redshirt candidate, or maybe a guy who could contribute right away?
Well, I think athletically, and having the opportunity to come here in January, I wouldn't want to say that Chance wouldn't be able to play in the fall. And even if that's in a that 4-game type of role, I do think physically there is development that will and needs to occur for Chance. He's still pretty skinny, but I'm excited to see what he can become, even in the next 6 months. What's he going to look like middle of the summer as far as just physically? You remove basketball and track from the equation, and he's just training for football, which he already has been doing very diligently, driving over to Oklahoma City as much as he has been. So no, we're really excited, and we don't want to set guardrails necessarily on any of these guys. Let them come in and compete, but also understand that they are not going to be forced to play. I think our program's in a position where guys, if they rise to the top, they're going to play. If they don't, and they have time to develop, they're going to be given that time. So no, we're excited about him, and he'll be out there in spring ball showing us what he can do.
Do you expect to kind of utilize his dual threat nature, or maybe would you like to maybe see his pocket presence develop a little more?
Well, I think utilize his strengths, which right now is certainly that dual threat nature. I think develop his pocket presence, much like I would say, Tommy Malotte's still developing in that regard, but fortunately for us, our offense, I don't think has to wait for him to develop that pocket presence fully to be able to play for us. So no, I think he's gonna transition, in the fact that he's here starting in January. The learning curve, while it might be somewhat steep here in the spring semester and spring ball, come the fall, he's gonna have that experience behind him, and it'll be interesting just to see where he's at. But developing, but we feel like we got a real talent and Chance. Real fortunate to get him to come up here.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again. Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any town pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Yep.
Coulter, do you have anything?
Yeah, just a couple, Coach. First of all, on the note of quarterbacks, first of all, you guys proved that you can play multiple quarterbacks at the same time this year, but that also seems like the position in which it's in flux the most at the D1 level, because chances are if you're the third, fourth guy, you're not going to be rotating in like you would be a linebacker, whatever, playing special teams. So how has sort of your recruitment philosophy around the quarterback position evolved over the years? And what do you sort of think of bringing in a talented guy like Chance to be added to a group that already has a lot of talent?
Well, that's a great question, and it certainly has evolved. I can think back to learning a hard lesson in 07, 08, 09, where we tried to compromise that position because we felt pretty good about it. We didn't keep lighting the fire with competition and depth. And, ever since then, in a sense, you can have too many because there's only so many scholarships you can allot to a position. But as far as having guys there that want to compete, that have the ability, go a little bit overboard there if you can. And, it has continued to change just the way that position, I think, is viewed as far as when do you pull the cord as far as leaving a place. And that's not to say that we'll have any of that, but that's just the nature of it. So, you want depth, you want competition, you want guys to be fueled by that competition. So ultimately you have, two, three guys that you feel comfortable playing with. And we were better served from that competition this fall. Fortunately for us, both those guys that played are coming back. And we need young guys to continue to rise up. I know it was pretty scary there a few of those weeks when we only had one of those guys. And that's nothing against Sean Austin, but Sean Austin wasn't ready to go in there and play the lion's share of reps for us. So, the more guys that you can have game ready at that position, the better off I think your team's going to be.
When it comes to just the sort of the balancing act of what the scenario is in college football, how do you go about that? Because you could bring in 25 transfers if you wanted to. And those guys will probably be more ready to play right now today than the guys you're bringing in from high school. How do you sort of balance who and where you sort of pick your spots in terms of between transfers and high school kids?
Well, I think you got to have a philosophy, and I know our philosophy is that the greater percentage of our guys that we can develop from beginning to end, the better off we're going to be. Yes, the transfer model can be successful, but it's not necessarily sustainable, because then you get right back in that mode. And are you going to hit the jackpot again? And beyond that, that continuity and that culture piece is so hard to develop, I think, in that quick turnover cycle. So what we do is, we start from the ground up by and large. The guys that we bring in as transfers, we got to feel like beyond being fits athletically or talent wise, they got to be able to fit in our locker room. They got to have the character traits that they'll come in and like Cleveland, a perfect example, a guy coming from the SEC, dropping down to the Big Sky. How does that work? Well, it works because, I think we were very clear with Cleveland what his opportunity would look like. And more so than anything, he fell in love with the guys as far as the relationships that he built with his teammates. And, and that's sustainable. You get guys like that fit in, you have a culture that guys can fit in, and you recruit to that. So that would answer my question. I'm sure some other coaches across the country would see that differently, but that's how we view it here.
And last one from me, because there is thousands and thousands of guys in the transfer portal and every high school kid in the world has a huddle film now. I mean, what's the procedure of sort of parsing through it? Because with how popular of a school Montana State is, I'm sure you guys have the opportunity at least to recruit thousands of guys. So how do you sort of go about paring down the ones you actually go out and use your resources to recruit?
Well, we're still committed to we're starting it with the relationships that we can have with high school coaches, our position coaches who recruit areas, really trying to invest in those areas, understand those areas, understand where, what the good programs are, what coaches you can really trust as far as what they're going to tell you. And that takes work. Getting out, and we'll start that process a little bit further in January when we get out, and in the spring. But it's certainly, a lot of phone calls in between that, those two periods, because that information, I still think is the best source of information, because you need to learn more than just what a 20 play highlight tape looks like and what that makes you feel like. What intangibles will someone bring to the table? And then, spending time, in those schools when we have an opportunity to, and beyond the high school coach, learning more about them and getting kids to come to camp where we can have much greater interaction with them is all part of the process, because I think the current state of recruiting, you can be really lazy but feel good about what you're doing based on what kids are rated and whatnot, where kids have been, who recruited them for that matter. You got to ultimately feel good about what you think about them. And if you don't have the wherewithal to think the right way about recruiting, then you're in trouble. So I think it's just to say it's an old fashioned approach that as it's tried and true, that football you can still exist in that world in football. I don't know that you can necessarily in basketball, but I do think you can. If you have the right high school coaches that you can have relationships with and trust them, I do think that's still where you start. And, paring down from thousands to 20s, that takes work and commitment and an investment that is time and money and energy and all that stuff that we have to be all about here.
Real last question for me. You mentioned the camps. How important are camps for you guys? But also when you got guys coming in from warm weather places like California and Texas, how do you go about then explaining like a day like today where it's, 10 degrees outside, a little different than June in Bozeman?
Yeah, I think ultimately you want guys that are going to value the complete experience rather than worrying about that. I know both Powdrill and Cedric Jefferson were both here for the Raw the Wild game. And that was not quite like today, but that was a pretty crisp day. And, one's from Texas, one's from California. I think if you catch some feedback that all they're talking about is the weather, they probably wouldn't be on this list of signees, but, they were about the experience. Certainly it helped that we had College game day here that day, but no, I think that's something that if the wrong things are priorities and it's clear in recruiting that's the case, we better distance ourselves in recruiting. And that's not just weather. There's a lot of things that could be the wrong things that we gotta be in tune with as we go through the process. So we got a good thing to sell here, not only our football program, but our university and our community and our state. So we got to find the right ones that want to buy into that.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any town pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.